Welcome students to the series of lectures in sociology. Topic of our today's discussion is positivism, an intellectual doctrine. Before discussing the positivism, let's briefly have a look of the social setting in which the sociology emerged. That can help us in understanding the doctrine of positivism. As we know that all intellectual fields get shaped within the social settings. This is particularly true of sociology, which is not only derived from that social setting but takes that social setting as its subject matter. Sociology emerged as a response to the forces of change which took place during 18th and 19th centuries in Europe. The French society, pervaded by the state of disorder, chaos and confusion, anarchy causes due to the French Revolution and the Enlightenment, attracted the attention of French scholar Auguste Comte. Like other French thinkers of his time, Comte was preoccupied with propagating order and harmony out of chaos created by the French Revolution. Comte's primary preoccupation centered around the improvement of society, and such improvement, he reasoned, necessitated the development of a theoretical science of society. To establish this science was Comte's lifelong mission. The new science that Comte sought to establish, he first called it social physics. Later, when he thought that the term had been stolen from him by the Belgian social statistician Adolphe Quetelet, he coined the word sociology, a hybrid of Latin and Greek words. It was to be patterned after the natural sciences, not only in its empirical methods and epistemological underpinnings, but also in the functions it would serve for mankind. The use of term social physics made it clear that Comte sought to model sociology after the hard sciences. This new science, which in his view would ultimately become the dominant science, was to be concerned with both social statics and social dynamics. Most important, Comte identified society as a phenomenon that can be studied scientifically. Prior to Comte's time, society simply was, to the extent that people recognized different kinds of societies or changes in society over time. Religion paradigms generally predominated in explanations of the differences. The state of social affairs was often seen as reflection of God's will, or alternatively, people were challenged to create a city of God on the earth to replace sin and godlessness. Comte separated his inquiry from religion. He felt that society could be studied scientifically, replacing religious belief with scientific objectivity. Comte's basic view that society could be studied logically and rationally was to form the basic foundation for the subsequent development of social sciences. In making the discipline of sociology in line with natural sciences, Comte developed the philosophical and methodological approach called as positivism. The main objectives in propounding the doctrine of positivism by Comte were to search for invariant laws of social life. This in turn will become the basis for bringing order and progress in the society. Besides, such a scientific study of social phenomena will make the discipline of sociology a scientific enterprise. Concept of positivism. Descartes and Newton and scientific inventions and discoveries were altering the cultural and intellectual landscape of the Europe. It was difficult to escape the influence of the age dominated by science, and to survive in such a milieu was to accept science and its ascending power. Auguste Comte did not escape from the influence of the science, and he developed an intellectual doctrine in the arena of social science in general and sociology in particular, that social world should be studied in the same way as the natural world by the methods of natural science. Comte's aim was to create a naturalistic science of society which would both explain the past development of mankind and predict its future. According to him, the society of human beings must be studied in the same manner as the world of nature. He believed that we can discover social laws in society like the laws of nature as discovered by Newton. Comte maintained that new science of society must rely on reasoning and observation instead of depending on the authority of tradition. Only this can be called as scientific. Thus, his main concern was to study the society in a scientific way as the natural world. In order to study the society scientifically, he talked of positivism. In simple words, this change in studying the social world similarly as the studying of natural world by using the methods of natural science refers to positivism. Saint-Simon is known as the originator of positivism, although his name has not been used as much as that of Comte. Auguste Comte is regarded as the father of positivism. In his writings of Courage the Philosophy and Société Positive, Comte denounced the conventional methodology of his time based predominantly on metaphysics, speculation and mysticism, and enthroned positive method as the method of sociology. Dear students, the concept of positivism has been central in the philosophy of science debate since the beginning of 19th century, when Comte introduced the term, and through the 20th century when logical positivism was topical. The sense of the positivism concept has often varied depending on who was doing the describing. Dear students, here we will discuss the positivism mainly under two headings, which will help us in understanding the doctrine of positivism and its purpose. Dear friends, while the term positivism has a magnitude of meanings, it is usually used to mean the search for invariant laws of both the natural and social world. In Comte's version of positivism, these laws can be derived from doing research on the social world or theorizing from about that world. Research is needed to uncover these laws, but in Comte's view, the facts derived from such research are of secondary importance to sound speculation. Thus, Comte's positivism involves empirical research, but that research is subordinated to theory. In research terminology, positivism follows the principles of both induction and deduction. Comte's thinking is premised on the idea that there is a real world out there, and that is the task of scientists to discover and report on it. According to him, positive philosophers approach the questions with the simple aim of ascertaining the true state of things and reproducing it with all possible accuracy in their theories. There are two basic ways of getting at the real world that exists out there. First one is doing research and then theorizing. In this process of understanding the real world, sometimes theory guides the research and at times research leads to theory building. But in both the cases, scientists need research methods. By use of them, the process can be carried out. Regarding this, Comte identified three basic methods of sociology, three basic ways of doing research in order to gain empirical knowledge of the real social world. Besides these three basic methods, he also identifies another method called historical method, to which he gave very much importance. Let's now discuss the methods of inquiry which the sociology will imply in conducting research and formulating invariant laws as per the doctrine of positivism. Comte's aim of creating a naturalistic science of society must rely on the methods of natural science in order to study the social world. The basic assumption was that the identity of sociology as a true knowledge cannot be established without adopting methods of natural science. What then are the resources upon which sociology can draw when it sets itself the task of explaining the laws of progress of social order? They are first of all the same that have been used so successfully in the natural science. Dear students, these are observation, experimentation, and comparison. As far observation is concerned, observation does not mean the unguided quest for miscellaneous facts, but for the guidance of a preparatory theory. The observer would not know what facts to look at. No social fact can have any scientific meaning till it is connected with some other social fact by a preliminary theory. Hence, observation can come into its own only when it is subordinated to the statical and dynamic laws of phenomena, but within these limits it remains indispensable. Experimentation, the second scientific method of investigation, which in sociology means controlled observation and the careful scrutiny of what Comte called pathological cases as a true scientific equivalent in sociology of pure science. Experimentation is partly applicable in the social science. Direct experimentation is not feasible in the human world. Comparison, the scientific method of inquiry of central importance to the sociologist is comparison. This includes comparison of human society to animal society, society to society, like to unlike. Comparison of human society will give us precious clues to the first germs of the social relations and to the borderlines between the human and the animals. Central to sociology is the comparison of the different coexisting states of human society on the various parts of Earth's surface. By this method, the different stages of evolution may all be observed at once. Dear students, moreover, the comparative method is of the essence when we wish to study the influence of race or climate on the human affairs. This method has been used by the Comte himself in propounding the law of three stages. Historical method. According to Comte, the conventional methods of science, observation, experimentation, and comparison must be used in combination with the historical method. Dear students, the historical comparison of the consecutive states of humanity is not only the chief scientific device of the new political philosophy, it constitutes the substratum of the science in whatever is essential to it. The historical method involved the search for general laws governing the successive transformation of humanity through fixed but limited number of stages. Comte insisted that we could not understand a particular social phenomenon unless we restore it to its social context. To understand the significance of religion, one should understand the entire social and cultural context, and a particular moment in history is to be understood against the whole historical process. Dear students, historical comparisons throughout the time in which humanity has evolved are at the core of sociological inquiry. Sociology is nothing if it is not informed by a sense of historical evolution. While Comte used the term positivism in the sense of science committed to the search for invariant laws, he also used it in another way as the opposite of negativism that, in his view, dominated the social world of his day. More specifically, that negativity was the moral and political disorder and chaos that occurred in France and throughout Western Europe in the wake of French Revolution of 1789. Among the symptoms of this malaise were intellectual anarchy, political corruption, and incompetence of political leaders. Comte's positive philosophy was designed to counter the negative philosophy and its symptoms that he found all around. Dear students, according to Comte, intellectual anarchy was the cause of social disorder. Comte traced that intellectual anarchy to the coexistence during his lifetime of all three incompatible philosophies: theological, metaphysical, and positivist. Not only did all three exist at one time, but none of them at that was very strong. Theology and metaphysics were in decay, in a state of imbecility, and positivism, as it relates to the social world, that sociology, was as yet unformed. The conflict among and weakness of these three intellectual schemes allowed a variety of subversive schemes to grow, progressively more dangerous. The answer to this intellectual chaos clearly lay in the emergence of any one of them as preeminent, and given Comte's law, the one that was destined to emerge supreme was positivism. Order and progress were two major concerns of Comte. From his point of view, theology offered a system of order but without progress. It was a stagnant system. Metaphysics offered progress without order. He associated it with the anarchy of his day, in which things were changing in a dizzying and disorderly way. Dear students, to Auguste Comte, positivism was the only system offered both order and progress. On the one hand, positivism would bring through the restraint of intellectual and social disorder. On the other hand, it would progress through the increase in knowledge and through perfection of the relationship among the parts of the social system, so that society would move nearer, although never fully attain its determinate end. Thus, positivism is the only stage in the history of humankind that offers both order and progress. Dear students, it is better for us to go through the principles of positivism, as in order to understand the positivism, it is necessary to know about the principles on which the positivism governs. Both from epistemological and methodological point of view, different scholars have enumerated various principles of positivism. Some of the central principles of positivism are as objectivism, empiricism, objectivity, anti-rationalism, university of science, deduction and induction, determinism, and design. Various scholars have criticized the positivism. Let us briefly revive here. Positivism became a powerful paradigm and methodology in the field of sociology. It had its appeal and sought to give a scientific status to the discipline of sociology. The search for precision, objectivity, causality, and value neutrality made it acceptable and has been continuously followed by the sociologists. In spite of its place and position in the discipline, a galaxy of sociologists have criticized the positivism. From the end of 1960s, however, positivism was the target of strong and growing criticism. Such criticism came predominantly from the campus of symbolic interactionism, phenomenology, philosophical hermeneutics, Marxism, the Frankfurt School, ethnomethodology, and feminism. Such criticism encouraged researchers to rethink their methodological orientation and ultimately strengthened a non-positivist or anti-positivist attitude in this context. They share a view that the subject matter of the social sciences, people and their institutions are fundamentally different from the natural science. Their study of the social world, therefore, requires a different logic of research procedure, and that reflects the distinctness of humans as against the natural order. The focus of their criticism were different points. Predominantly, the subject matter of social science is different from the natural science. Besides, criticism focused on the manner in which reality was addressed and defined, the manner in which knowledge extracted was conducted, the methods employed in the data collection and analysis, the ways in which research was designed and executed, the relationship between the researcher and the researched, the positivist perception of the gender, and the acceptance of the methods of physical science as tools in social research. Dear students, to conclude, it may be said that positivism refers to a way of understanding social phenomena based on the science. Positivism is also depicted as the view that all true knowledge is scientific and that all things are ultimately measurable. It involves all the principles, tenets, features of natural science. Positivism tries to study the social phenomena involving the processes, procedures, strategies used by natural science in order to understand in the same way as the natural science are able, so that universal laws of social life can be formulated and also to testify the existing theories for the betterment of human society. Thank you so much.